What's up, YouTube people? I've been playing CoreKeeper for about a month now, and I wanted to do a video on the technical components in it, because although there's a bunch of videos already out there, I think it's good that we take the time to really learn how these components work properly, so that more people can understand things and build their own components. Usually the life cycle of tech stuff in games like this is that most players just build designs they see online other people make, and that's all good, it's fine. I'm not saying that's a bad thing. I mean, by all means, if you find a cool design, build it yourself, absolutely. And that's part of how game communities grow. But I think we're in a special place right now with CoreKeeper in that, this game's version of Redstone is really not that complicated yet. So I would like to see more players get into it and try to build their own stuff and really have an understanding of it, as opposed to just all the typical, one guy figures out how to make a really cool farm and everyone just builds the exact same design all the time. So, to jump into that, I think the first thing to explain is power itself. So, in this game, the objects that actually output power are the power generator and the lever. And right off the bat, when I read the descriptions of these things, the lever says it generates a low amount of electricity, and the generator just says it powers things. But when I read that low amount of power, I immediately went, okay, power generators are better, use power generators for everything, because why would I ever want a low amount of power? And that's not really true. In this game, any object, whether it's a light or a robot arm or a drill, is always just either on or off. There is no amount of power, there's no rate of efficiency like you find in other automation games. And the only real difference between the two, aside from levers being able to be turned on and off, is that the power generator will power anything connected to it by 24 tiles or less. So you can see that's 5, 10, 15, 24. Anything more than that, it would not be powering. And the lever goes up to 12. And it is in fact 12 along the wires or along any component. Every component will act as its own wire. It will connect everything on all four sides of it. And we can show that here, because I left this one right here, which is currently more than 12. You can actually see the power dying off on this tile right here, with the signal strength being shown in the actual wires themselves. But if I grab, say, a robot arm, and I place that robot arm right here, then now we can see the power is coming through the robot arm as if it was a wire, and allowing this to be powered because it's no longer more than 12 blocks away. So now, the next thing we're going to talk about is actually robot arms themselves. So the robot arms have multiple functions. They pull and they push, where pulling is picking an item up, and pushing is putting an item down. And in those two things, there are actually, again, two functions. So the first thing is that it can pull things from an object, like this, and the next thing is that it can pull things from the ground itself. And I'm going to preload this so that we can see something really cool happen here. So I'll turn this one on, and it'll put all of those items on the ground on the same tile as the chest here. When I turn this on, what's interesting, it's actually going to grab the items from the ground first. So pulling from the ground takes priority over pulling from any object's output inventory. So that's just kind of cool. The other thing it can do is push items. So I've preloaded a bunch of stuff in this chest here, and we'll see that if you memorize this order, if you really care about it, it will actually pull them from this chest inventory and output them into that chest inventory in exactly the same order. So everything happens sequentially here. And this is an example over here where we're going to talk about input and output inventory. So when you're talking about a chest, every slot in this chest is both input and output. So that's why we were able to take things out of a chest and put them into a chest, and that's all fine. But when you come to specific things, namely blocks that do some kind of production, like a smelter, they only allow certain things in their input inventory, and they will only ever have certain things in their output inventory. But most importantly, the robot arm will only ever put things into the input inventory, and only ever remove things from the output inventory. So that's why when we turn this on here, we'll see anything that can't go in will just immediately be caught by the other arm and moved out, whereas the rest of these tin are just being stacked up in the input, and only once it's actually done cooking up a tin will it move that tin out by pulling from the output inventory. Should be right now. Cool. So that's why your auto smelters can work by just having a chain of robot arms on them, because there's no reason to do anything smart there. It will only ever pull from the output inventory, and whether it's another different metal or, even a random item going through your system, it'll just get passed right over it. Kill this guy here because we're trying to make a video. The next thing we want to talk about is, of course, the drill. The drill, much like the arm, has again two functions. The first function is that it will apply damage to the block in front of it. So if we turn this on, we'll watch that it will just destroy that block. And one thing that's really cool about the drill is that it really does just apply damage. It doesn't do a damage check. So what I mean by that is if I step on this waypoint here, I'm not allowed to break it, right? I can't I have activated the waypoint. I guess I put that there more than 10 minutes ago. But if I hit this lever right here, you'll see that these are just applying damage to it. They don't have that damage check. So even though my pick does, 662 mining damage, and these only do like 20 or 40, if you have enough of them, or just give them enough time, they will break whatever block is in front of them. The second function of a drill is to be a 2-block long conveyor belt. And we can see this here. It really is a 2-block long conveyor belt. There's nothing tricky about it, because I built 3 lanes here. One is just conveyor belts, one is drills and conveyor belts, and the other is just drills. And by powering these all at the same time, you'll see that that little tin ingot is moving at the exact same rate, regardless of what's moving it. So drills really are just 2-block long conveyor belts. Now, most of the automation things you're going to build will end up being about moving items around. And as such, I want to do this here. Oh, I didn't realize I already had a thing in there. Because I want to show you that the items in this game don't have collision. They don't really do anything, in fact. It is the lightest weight object any game has ever had. It doesn't have collision, it has almost no interactions. The only things it can interact with is the drill, a conveyor belt, an arm, and the player. But it is not interacting with this wall. This wall doesn't exist. And you can prove that by just pulling it straight through the wall. It doesn't care that the wall was there at all. You can also, once the drill has now been a conveyor belt, moved it to here, pull it with an arm right through the wall. So items do not have collision. They are barely even a game object. They're super lightweight, and that's why your game is not going to lag out just because you have a whole bunch of items on the ground. These things are taking up like a couple bytes of RAM. Like, not even kilobytes, not megabytes, but just bytes. It is the lightest game object in the world. Don't worry about that lagging out your world. The next thing we want to talk about is these dudes in the way. Is the logic circuit. So the logic circuit says that it will allow electricity to move through when it has exactly 2 inputs. And the delay circuit, which we'll get to next, stores electricity and then sends it out 1 second later. And just like that, they have all 3 of these sides, and these sides are the input sides, and the output side is this side right here. And that's the same for both of these things. So we can show that right here. This one already has 2 inputs, but if I turn this off, that will turn off. If I turn this one on, that'll turn back on. But that's because it had 2 in each case. If I give it this 3rd input right here, it turns off again. So only when it has exactly 2 inputs will it be on. Also, another thing you should understand about this thing is that it always outputs the strongest signal strength that it is receiving. So in this case, even though we're using levers for the other 2 inputs, it's always outputting the full output of this power generator, and that's why this is able to be so far away. If I was using just the levers, it would die around here somewhere, but using the power generator as one of my outputs, this always outputting the strongest signal strength, it will always output all the way out to here. So next we have, this is the first example I use the electricity stick. Technically the electricity stick is the 3rd power block in the game, but the only thing it can do is tell this block that it has 1 input. So right now it's on, it has this 1 input here, but both of our levers are off, so it's doing nothing. But if I turn either of the levers on, we get the light on. If I turn them both on, we get it off, because that's our 3rd input. But again, right, this is technically giving a very low amount of power in game terms, but it wouldn't be able to power anything. If you were to put an actual thing connected to just the electricity stick, you can see that this arm's power indicators did not turn on. But since the other input is a lever, this is outputting the full signal strength of a lever. So that's why that's able to be as far away as it is, and it totally works. It's actually 1 block less. Going through the logic gate does count as going through 1 block. So that's actually 11, not 12. Next, we have our delay circuit. So the delay circuit will do exactly what it says. I can turn this on, and it took 1 full second for the light to turn on. Likewise, I can turn it off. And I just have these 3 levers here to show that you can give it input from any of the 3 sides. And there you go. So again, takes a second to turn on, takes a second to turn off. Now, this is probably the only circuit you'll ever need in terms of combining these 2. But what's going to happen here is right now this circuit has 1 side powered because of the electricity stick. But if I flick this lever, it's going to have 2 on, which means it's outputting power to here. But this power is powering that 1 second delay circuit. So for 1 second, it's going to chill out, receiving power. And then for 1 second, it's going to provide power, which means this will be at 3 inputs, which will turn the whole system off. But with the whole system off, that's no longer receiving power. So in the next second, that side can be on. So that's going to repeat forever, meaning this is our 1 second on, 1 second off clock. And for a lot of things in the automation of this game, 1 second delay is all you ever need. So for the vast majority of complex circuits you ever do figure out, a 1 second clock is going to be your best friend. The last thing I want to talk about is this cross circuit. So the cross circuit just allows for the same tile to be used by multiple circuits without them interacting with each other. So you can see here that I can turn this one on and off freely and it doesn't affect the other one. I can turn this one on and off freely and it doesn't affect the other one. It did cause a flash right there. That's just the game being buggy. That's not really happening. I don't know why that happens. It's kind of weird. But you can also use it diagonally. So I can do this and now that one's connected. See, like I said, other things flash sometimes when you click levers on and off. It's not really real though. It's just the game being kind of whack. But as you can see, these are two separate circuits. And if you're wondering how to place this is actually still a cross circuit. You just select it and hit E. So you action the cross circuit to turn it into any of its 3 available states. So, hopefully that wasn't too fast for everybody, but I think the last thing I want to do here is shuffle my inventory a bit, maybe eat a burrito. Let's do a little fun little example here that uses all of the components and is something actually useful for your world. So if you want to try building this thing here, that's a screenshot of everything you need. That's actually way more wires than you need. I think I'm only going to place like 5 or 6. But let's just do this real quick. So we're going to make an armor sorter, so it's an item or a system that will be able to sort out anything that is armor and anything that is not armor. So we'll start things off. We'll place down our lever, turn it on, and we'll immediately run it into a logic circuit going this way. And now I'm going to connect that with wires, meaning it now has 2 inputs. So it is now outputting on this side. And we're going to bring this up to here, and I'm going to put our delay circuit right here, turning it into a 1 second clock. So once again, we have that effect where that's being stored for 1 second, then outputting to turn the system off, and then repeating for. The next thing we want to do is, I forgot the robot arms, is have a robot arm right here, and we'll place a chest right here. So now this will be our input chest, and this robot arm will take things out of its inventory, and it will attempt to place it onto this armor stand. So now by placing a drill right here, we have a 1 second timer. And by the way, this 1 second timer will also mean that although this is applying damage to the mannequin, it will never destroy the mannequin. Because the mannequin will kind of like regen between the 1 second and never actually get fully destroyed by this drill. So this is totally safe to do, even though it is doing damage to that block. And then the last thing we need is another robot arm right here. But there is a little bit of a trick here. We don't want all of them running at the same time, because then you run the risk of this arm placing an item that doesn't go on the mannequin and immediately being grabbed by this arm and ending up in the wrong chest. So to do that, we can use another delay circuit right here. And since its timer is 1 second, and this is a 1 second clock, these are now alternating which one's on and which one's off. So now this drill and this arm will be on, which is why anything that doesn't go on the mannequin will immediately be pulled away from this drill, and this arm. And when this arm does get power, it will only be able to grab things that are still on the mannequin itself. So the last thing to do here is just do one of these, give it power. It's fine to run this at the same time as that drill and that arm. And then we can put our 2 output chests here. And now we can do the fun stuff. So I put a bunch of random stuff in this chest here, and it's armor, it's stuff, it's whatever. And if I throw it all in this chest in no particular order, we will see that the system is automatically grabbing stuff, putting it on the mannequin, stuff that belongs on the mannequin stays there, and then when this arm receives power, it can take it off, but anything that doesn't go on the mannequin is immediately being pulled away by this drill, and then later being grabbed by this arm. So I'm going to let that run for a second, we'll just chill out, and that's it. So now, if we look into here, we'll see this is all of the stuff I put in that chest that isn't armor, and that is all the stuff I put in the chest that is armor. So hopefully, with that, you have a decent understanding of what the various power mechanisms are, how robot arms actually work, what it means for an inventory slot to be an input and an output inventory slot. The fact that items don't have collision, you can pass them straight through walls, you can pull them and push them with conveyor belts, drills, and arms. That drills really are valid conveyor belts, the various logic circuits, and maybe if you want to build one of these things, you'll find yourself inspired to actually use some of this stuff and try to come up with your own little filter thing. One fun thing about this design is that this exact design will work with any block you want placed in the mannequin that has specified inventory. So it could be like the feeding trough, or I don't know, whatever other blocks there are that have specified inventory. It would be really cool if we had like a specified block just for weapons, then you could filter out weapons too. But yeah, so aside from that, I think I'm going to end it here. But I think that's a pretty good explanation of what the various items are, what the various circuits are, and hopefully you learned something. Hopefully it wasn't too boring. And if you like this video, like the video. Also, if you want to see the other crazy crap I built in CoreKeeper, I stream this game every Tuesday and Thursday from 4 to 8 EST. So come hang out on Twitch, and we'll play some CoreKeeper, where I've done some way more impressive things than this. But yeah, see ya.